So next, we are going to have our next invited speaker, Brian Fischler. Brian is a stand-up comedian. He is a writer and also a podcaster. He's known for his podcast, That Real Blind Tech Show, which they discuss the assistive technologies for blind and visually impaired. And he is also the founder and the producer of Laugh or Sight Benefit, which raises money for retinal eye disease research and guide dog programs. And today Brian is going to bring us his talk, Will Computer Vision and AI Revolutionize the Web for People Who Are Blind? Let's welcome Brian.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? Thanks so much for coming out. It's Wesley, my better half here. So, thank you so much for that nice intro. And I've been a professional stand-up comedian for 20 years and funny for 2 of them. So, but unfortunately, I'm not here to be funny today, because today I'm here to talk about the state of computer vision and AI for people with disabilities. So, you know, there's no laughing to AI unless we're going to talk about the hallucinations. So, to understand kind of my story, you kind of have to go back to the beginning. I grew up sighted. I went totally blind in 2009. You know, it was tough. You know, I lost my last full-time job. I lost my apartment in Midtown Manhattan, and I ended up in Jamaica, and that's not the good Jamaica, that's Jamaica, Queens. You know, when you're used to living in Midtown Manhattan, when you walk out your front door and everything's there, to go to a place like Jamaica, Queens, it's pretty tough, you know, it changes your entire life and what you're used to. And I ended up in a dark room staring at a wall saying, well, what am I going to do with my life now? I had not really ever used technology. I didn't grow up with technology in my life. You know, back when I was a kid, the only people using technology were nerds. And I'm now thankful that the nerds have won, because I now rely on all their technology pretty much to do everything. And this was all about 2011, that I was in that dark room looking at the wall, thinking about what am I going to do with the rest of my life. And I think back then to 2009, where I went to the Lighthouse Guild in New York City. And there was this guy from this fruit company, and he had this iPhone 3GS. And he was flicking around the screen, and it was talking to you. At the time, as my vision was failing, I had been using a BlackBerry, but I couldn't see the screen anymore. So I immediately got that iPhone 3GS, and I learned how to use VoiceOver on it, the talking screen reader. So flash forward back to that dark room in 2011. I had never used a screen reader at the time. I had always used magnification when I needed it, inverted colors, that sort of thing. And I ended up getting a Mac with VoiceOver, which is their screen reader. But the problem was nobody in the country was teaching anybody how to use it. I mean, even at the Apple store, they sold me Windows for Mac, and I spent about a week trying to figure out how it worked with VoiceOver, only to find out that in 2011, VoiceOver and Microsoft were not playing very nice together, and it didn't work with VoiceOver at all. And the people at Apple didn't even know that. So anyway, I'm in that dark room, and thankfully I connected globally with other blind people that were learning how to use VoiceOver, people in Australia, people in Europe, and we kind of became our own community where we bounced questions off each other and we learned how to use that screen reader. And it got to the point where I became such an expert with VoiceOver that I ended up designing the curriculum that New York State Commission for the Blind still uses to teach other blind people how to use VoiceOver. They probably should update it by now, because that was a long time ago that I designed it. And I think this kind of all led to, I believe it was 2012, the VizWiz Challenge. And this was the first time that we in the blindness community got our hands on any kind of image recognition. And it was revolutionary at the time, but it was based on crowdsourcing, which was really slow. And you depended on, well, who knows if that person that's answering what this object isn't a complete lunatic. You know, you were really dependent on them. I remember sometimes you would take a photo and it would take 2 days to get a result. You know, before any of this though, you know, you'd order your groceries as a blind person, they'd arrive, and let's just say you shouldn't order anything that came in the same size together, because we had no clue what it was. So say you ordered toothpaste and hemorrhoid cream, well, that could lead to a really uncomfortable situation. Okay, so I brushed my teeth once with hemorrhoid cream. That was enough, but yeah, so then the VizWiz Challenge came out, and this was the first time where you could order toothpaste and hemorrhoid cream in the same and take a photo of that box and get an answer, sometimes in 2 days. But this was the way things were going, and you know, it was really fascinating at the time. And you know, the VizWiz Challenge then kind of led to some other apps coming out. Seeing AI, as well as Envision AI. And you know, my personal favorite for taking documents, which is called Voice Dream Reader. Not sure about why they renamed it to VD Scan, by the way. I don't think they had a marketing department at that company. That's what it's called nowadays. But you know, these were the first apps that they were allowing blind people to get rid of those old school bulky scanners. I mean, that's how blind people read their mail. You put it in a scanner, and you know, it took time, it was clunky, and the results always weren't the greatest, but documents, anything, you know, there was no way for blind people, anytime you got a credit card in the mail, you know, there was no way to get that scanned back in 2012, 2013, until some of these apps came along. And then with 2015, it gave us the apps Be My Eyes, as well as Ira. For those of you not familiar with them, they're voice interpretation services. And actually, I was kind of stunned when I was looking at this to learn that Be My Eyes made it out first. Be My Eyes is an app that uses, I guess, crowdsourcing, where a person that's blind could call a sighted volunteer and have them help them find the door to a place they're looking for, or scan some mail, or anything they need help seeing. You know, what's this product in my hand, that sort of thing. And this was another step forward. And then the great thing about Ira is it's a more bonded service that you pay for, so you weren't relying on the kindness of volunteers to find information. You know, for example, your tax documents, you don't exactly want to be scanning that with complete strangers. And the great thing about Ira is they were able to manipulate the camera and zoom in, so they could take that perfect photo of my tax documents since I started paying them, and you know, pass that along to my accountant and everything, making life much more simple. You know, they could also take a photo of my guide dog doing something cute that I wanted to capture, because when these apps came out, blind people taking photos, it was still a little clunky. Talking about images, as well, going back to 2010, when a blind person looked at an image on a computer, it would read to us IMG-8675309, well, that might be a catchy song, it's not very useful information about the photo. And then, around 2013-ish, 14-ish, Facebook started telling us maybe a photo of a dog, which that was kind of cool, but it wasn't too descriptive. Flash forward to nowadays using services that have evolved, such as Seeing AI, which really came out in 2017, and Seeing AI, it's coined the Swiss Army knife of apps for blind people because it does so many things. It does short text in real time. For example, I order food service and I like to know what I'm eating, believe it or not, and they have labels on it. I just take it out and within seconds, it's telling me what that item is and everything with unbelievable accuracy. It's also a document scanner, a currency reader. I could snap a photo of it of the people in this room and get a scene description through Seeing AI. And that's why it's known as the Swiss Army knife, because it does so many different things, and it's still evolving. And now we got to the point where we eventually got to the explosion of AI, and how AI and computer vision has massively improved the lives of people with disabilities. Be My Eyes has become Be My AI, which I've been very fortunate where I was an early beta tester, and now we're getting to the point where I can take a photo of a couple boxes of soda and not even have to ask a question, and it'll just automatically tell me what it is. I am now to the point, we used to have the days with these old apps where you could take a photo of a menu and it would very slowly read you the entire menu. Now, say I know I want a sandwich. I take the photo of the menu with Be My AI and say, just tell me about the sandwiches. And it's much faster, and people that I'm eating with, it doesn't take me 3 hours to read the menu, so they're appreciative of that. And now you have other apps that are jumping into the AI, as Ira too has now got their own AI and taking photos. There's an app that we just had on my show, that Real Blind Tech Show, yes, shameless plug, PixieBot. And this is a developer that way back in 2012, he's Dutch, created an app called Googly Eyes, I think, pardon me, it was something, I'm blanking on it, doesn't exist anymore. Talking Goggles, pardon me, that was the name of the app, Talking Goggles. And this was another one of those apps that would scan products and help blind people read them. Well, his new app, PixieBot, it's the first app that I know of that it's describing video to blind people, where if you take a 30-second video, it'll tell you what's in that video. It'll tell you if somebody's narrating, the tone of the person narrating's voice. And this is how rapidly everything's been expanding as far as native and mobile apps go. The problem's been screen reader technology, where we've gotten updates here and there, but it has not exploded as rapidly as these apps have. I mean, I remember a time where I became quite proficient, obviously, as I mentioned, with voiceover, and I spent a good hour navigating a shopping site for dog food and dog toys. I won't mention the name of the company. And I finally got to the end, and I was very proud of myself, finding everything I needed, and I go to do what was Control-Option-Spacebar to click the checkout button, and nothing happens. I click it again, nothing happens. I click enter, nothing happens. And this is still the state of web accessibility, where people are not designing for people with disabilities. I was just at another conference and I met people that are grad students and PhD students at some of the top programs in design in this country. And I said, hey, I'm kind of curious, how much of your curriculum included screen readers? 0. How much included inclusive design? 0.1 maybe. All they were taught about was color contrast, and that's the problem. The designers are not being given the proper tools and not being educated about inclusive design and screen reader accessibility. And believe it or not, people with disabilities use the web. We just went through, a few years ago, the greatest example in human history on why websites need to be accessible, the pandemic. If you lived alone and had a disability, how the hell were you gonna shop? How the hell were you gonna do anything? And it's amazing, a lot of companies get it, but there are still a lot of companies that don't get it. They think it's gonna be too expensive to properly code their website. They try to use a cheap plugin, which ends up making their website even more inaccessible in a lot of ways. I could go off on hours on the plugin companies, and it is baffling. And then you get small designers that are just so committed to accessibility because they get it. It's good business practice. You're gonna make more money. It's proven fact that people with disabilities are returning customers more than people without disabilities because we become committed to companies that go the extra mile. There are so many companies that have fought accessibilities, major companies, Amazon, Spectrum Cable, and those are two companies that once they got into accessibility and creating accessible design have become two of the biggest. Did I get cut off?
Yes, it's been happening intermittently.
I was like, what is this, the Oscars? My time up? Anyway, the companies, I'm not bad-mouthing Amazon or Spectrum, they've become two of the biggest leaders in accessible design and commitment to accessible design. There we go. And it's just, education is really the focal point. And I now, 75% of American blind individuals are unemployed. That's a baffling number. Of the 25% that are gainfully employed, I was talking to a colleague of mine, and we anticipated that as little as 1 to 3% of the 25% employed are actually employed at corporations, meaning that 22% of blind employed people are either working for a state agency or working for a blindness-specific organization. I'm fortunate enough where I just went back to corporate America. I'm not here speaking on their behalf today, but I'm now working with Yahoo. And that's a company that is so committed to accessible and inclusive design. And the reason I bring the company up in the work, as a lot of you probably work with Figma files. And even though Figma claims their files are accessible, they're not accessible. I'm looking forward to a day where I think we could be a year away with computer vision and AI, that when I look at a Figma file, I'm calling it personal AI. That's where I wanted to get to, where this AI is gonna know that I'm blind, so I'm not gonna have to tell it every time, remember, I'm blind, so I can't see this, blah, blah, blah. It's gonna know, it's gonna be smart enough to know that, and it's gonna tell me when I'm looking at that Figma file, here's the design, here's the spacing, the things that I never thought I'd be able to do. My colleagues are fantastic because they know I have limitations, but I'm looking forward to a day where those limitations are gone. And I think computer vision and AI is getting us there. The day where, when I encounter an inaccessible button, because the web, it's never gonna fully be fixed. People have spent years doing lawsuit after lawsuit, suing inaccessible websites, and you know what we find out? They pay the fee, the lawyers get rich, and then they never end up fixing the website because people just don't. Unfortunately, people don't care. That's the problem. The people in this room, they care, but unfortunately, all the people making the decisions don't care. So with computer vision and AI, I think we're getting to a point when I encounter an inaccessible button, I'll be able to tell it where to click, and it'll do it for me. And this is where we are now. This is where we're getting to. And it's just gonna be making people with mobility issues and everything. We never thought that they'd be able to use the web in the way that they're able to use it today. And it's all because of what's going on and the rapid speed of computer vision and AI. Unfortunately, when it comes to hiring, we're still going to have to depend on people until AI can replace the hiring managers. But I think it's a spectacular time, and I think it's only going to get better. And you hear all the negativity out there about AI. This is the positivity about AI and what it's doing, and the amazing things that people with disabilities that can't see, they're able to do now, and I think it's pretty cool, and I'm proud to be a part of this community, and can't wait to see what people in this room and other people come up with next. And I guess, any questions or anything? Shout them out because I can't see your hand.
Can you list a few problems that still exist in your daily life that perhaps people in this room could help, or people at this conference could help with?
Yeah, AI, not everybody's beautiful, so, oh, it's a beautiful person. No, it's funny, there's a lot of generalizations when using people description. And yeah, I think, obviously we've all heard about Apple Intelligence and what they're doing, and to be able to look through photos and know that that's my mom, or that's my guide dog Wesley, this was my previous guide dog Nash, for it to be able to differentiate between people. I mean, as somebody that was able to see up until 2009, photos when we were at, IMG, whatever, that was useless. Maybe photo of a dog, useless really for somebody that was able to see. But now the descriptions are getting so just brilliant and descriptive that I'm actually back into taking photos. I'm actually wearing the Meta Ray-Bans, which I can take photos of. And so I think that being able to get more intelligent and tell photos who is who, that sort of thing, would be pretty cool. And, just continuing the speed of it, real-time video. That's where I think the AI in the future is going to be. Not even having to snap that photo, to be able to put something on a wearable. I mean, the blindness community, it's so funny because people are like, blind people wear glasses? Yes, we do. And everybody wants everything in a wearable. And the day that the wearable could just take real time, okay, for example, I used Ira to walk over here from the hotel today. I called the sighted volunteer, they gave me great directions, and it's fantastic. But I look at a time where the glasses, which are open ear and bone conducting, so I can hear what's going on around me, will tell me, okay, make a right, make a left, and it'll be using computer vision to help me navigate. I'm still gonna have to walk around with a guide dog or a white cane, obviously, but to be able to get that in real time, that would be spectacular.
Thanks.
Well,
Brian?
yeah.
Even though the captioning is getting amazing, do you still feel like it would be helpful to be able to interrogate the document about images? Because it may not tell you the specific thing that you're interested in, right? So I'm just curious if that, what you think about that.
Follow-up questions, that's obviously going to be important. That's what we can do now. So having the ability to get the description, but then being able to ask that follow-up question and it knowing or being able to tell me that. So I think that's important. It's obviously some people might, and this is the thing with screen readers as well, some people might want a shorter description, other people are going to want a longer description. You're never going to make everybody happy. But to have that opportunity to get the information and to ask follow-up questions about the data that's been captured, that's what's pretty cool as well. And I know we can do that in a lot of places now. Pi is another app that I know that I'm using a lot, that it's pretty cool. That you just ask questions. It's not taking any photos per se to give you data. But yeah, it's the follow-up questions with photos, I think is probably very important. And I know with Be My AI right now and Ira AI, you can ask follow-up questions to the photos that it's captured.
Thanks.
Cool.
Brian, I have a question. You mentioned screen readers to access websites and how inaccessible our websites are. Moving forward, a lot of the trends seem to be around mixed reality, AR, VR. Do you have any suggestions on how we could be, have that would look like, if you have any thoughts on that.
So I was just at XR Access and you know, all about virtual reality accessibility, and that's a tough field. You know, it was interesting. It was really fascinating seeing some of the projects that people are working on. And the thing with VR AR is there was one project that you know, you were able to move around into space and get spatial information. But with the explosion of AI now, I'm like, okay, well, this was really cool 10 years ago, but now we're getting close to being able to do this in real time in the real world. And I think just spatially, you know, manipulating that to the real world is kind of where the future of VR is going to be. I know you got to create a lot of that in an environment for testing and safety purposes, but I think real world practicality is kind of the best design for that moving forward, at least in my opinion. And that is a subject that goes way above my head, by the way. That's some pretty cool stuff.
Brian, I've got a question for you about personal identification. So I'm wondering what you think about the ability, like we can identify people, and you could use that with your Ray-Bans now, but there are obviously a lot of reasons why companies are worried about this, and governments are worried about it. And I'm curious about how you think about that balance and how you think we ought to talk about that.
It's a very, very interesting question. Very good point. Yeah, there's a lot of privacy. For example, when Be My AI first introduced the photo feature, where it was scanning photos, we went through a period where it would automatically say face blurred out for privacy concerns. I think this was, you know, they're partnered with ChatGPT. And, you know, honestly, if you're gonna wanna use this stuff, personally, I've given up on privacy. That was the thing of the 20th century. It's all gone. But I get, you know, you're gonna be walking down the street. Part of me is like, people recognize that these are the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, and is somebody gonna walk up and rip them off my face because they think I'm taking a photo of them? I mean, that's a situation I don't wanna be in. Other people's privacy, where they don't have a disability, they don't like all this stuff, it's a very tricky situation, and it's a tough crossroad to be at. And from a company perspective, you know, I think I don't know what the answer is. I mean, you don't want government getting involved, definitely, because we know they can only screw things up tech-wise, but are you gonna allow these companies, I mean, Facebook and their history of giving everybody's information away, but when it comes to somebody like myself, blindness, I said, the hell, I don't care about Facebook's history of giving away everybody's information. Be able to ask these glasses and say, hey, META, what am I looking at? And to get an answer most of the time that's right, it's worth it for me to sacrifice that privacy. But to fully abled people, I don't know what the answer is, because they don't need the technology that I need. So I think, you know, for somebody with disabilities, if you want to use the products, you're going to have to sacrifice the privacy, unfortunately.
Brian, I have a question. Would you mind to compare like the wearables such as Meta Glass and usage of phone? Because I heard like there were some problems with blind user adjusting angles with their phones where have
When we have
socially
logo,
not so comfortable.
voice only and vision, Be My Eyes app or ChatGPT app.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I think there's a question that's being asked virtually and a question that's being asked in the room.
Oh, okay,
Go
yeah.
ahead and start with the
So,
question in the room.
Yeah, what was the question in the room was about the different app, that there was a problem with the Meta glasses, I heard that part.
No, the comparison of your usage of wearable technologies and your phone. And because I heard from like people with a blind or low vision, when using the phone, it takes much more time and adjust right angle to input the right things. And also they want to have something directly face to the thing they are actually facing it. So like, I just want to hear from your experience of your
Yeah. Now, I have never been a big photo taker. I've just started doing that recently since I got these glasses. And, you know, with the phone, it does tell you, you know, iPhone and Android, you know, point left, point right, and I could never seem to, you know, get it to tell me if I'm pointing in the right direction. Honestly, like I said, most of the times before I got these glasses, if I wanted to get a photo that I knew was good that I wanted to share to social media, I'd call Ira, have the agent take control of my camera, take a photo of the dog or friends or whatever. And you know, that was my go-to. But since I got these glasses, I am taking photos, but I'm still asking a sighted person, hey, is this a good photo? And so far, every time they've said yes. I think the advantage of the glasses is that it's holding still and taking the photo, where, you know, with the phone, you still really don't know. So I think the wearable is probably going to be the future for people snapping photos that are blind. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
All right, so we're able to take one virtual question. If you have a question, you can just unmute yourself and shout out.
Do you want to check the computer to see if someone's
Oh.
Great. We'll have a panel session in a little bit so we can ask Brian some more questions.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Brian, for the awesome